Hello there, Golden Bear family. I hope you're well. I thought I would send out a video that will prepare you for the LEQ exam, but also give you greater confidence as we embark in this new type of essay format. So with that, I just want to bring a couple of things to your attention about the LEQ, or the long essay question. For those of you who are taking the exam in May, this is the last section of the exam, meaning you'll have the multiple choice, you'll have the DBQ, you'll have the short answer, but then you'll have the very last part will be the LEQ. And they're going to give you 3 choices that you will make. And I will spend some more time in late April sharing with you how to mathematically try and find your sweet spot, because they list which time periods will have the LEQ come from. Okay, so not every section will be tested upon the LEQ, so that's kind of a good thing. The second thing is that the test will be 40 minutes, so you have to be able to succinctly, quickly deduce and distill your thoughts down quickly so you can get them out in a matter of 40 minutes. So you're on your way to getting that wonderful 5 on the AP exam, but hopefully a 6 on this overall rubric. Don't know why my thing is not scrolling down. There we go. The question that you need to be prepared for this particular final exam with me is right here in front of you. Evaluate the extent to which Reconstruction fostered change in the lives of African Americans in the South from 1865 to 1877. This is due on the 11th of December by 11:59 p.m. And then you have the multiple choice part. That is questions 1 through 4, found on pages 445 through A through C. It's pretty routine, pretty straightforward, and you can see there that all my classes need to have the multiple choice section completed by the 18th. Now we do have a finals schedule that by next week, hopefully your teachers will all talk to you about it, but I'm going to have this video hopefully posted for you to enjoy. But you can see that there are synchronous classes in which things will be taking place there for you in terms of taking your exams. There is a video that you can watch that kind of highlights for you about the LEQ aspects of it, done by the acquaintance to all of us, Mr. Himmler, and he does a marvelous job, very creative job of telling you some of the important aspects of the LEQ. There's be some other videos that I post as well that you can watch as to breaking down the rubric and breaking down the components of the LEQ. So speaking of the rubric, this is the 6-point rubric that you need to be aware of and well versed in. We'll spend time on this in the spring break. And there should be some familiar terms for you. 1, contextualization, that's a point. Thesis or defending your claim, that's 2 points. You have to support and provide evidence of that using specific examples. And so point number 1 there says specific examples in reference to and relevant to the topic, gives you a point. And how this supports an argument that you make gives you a point as well. And then going down to the next 5 and 6 points, this is where we get into some more of the complex reasoning of things. So how you use historical reasoning, compare and contrast, or causation, or change over time to frame an argument gives you a point. And then how well you understand this complex thing, we call it nuance. All of these last 2 points of 1 and 2 under analysis and reasoning is what we're going to spend the bulk of our time on today. I think you've had contextualization and thesis and evidence and supporting it with historical evidence just fine. I'm going to spend a little time on those other 2 aspects. So here is our prompt, as I read to you before. What the geeks will love to give to you, the geeks meaning College Board, is they, instead of saying in the South from 1865 to 1877, they're always going to say in the 19th century. It's your job to slow things down. I know many of you are bright, many of you will have been prepared, many of you will spend hours and hours and hours, but when you come to the prompt, you just feel like, yeah, I understand what they're asking, and you just skip through it. You need to earnestly slow down and ask yourself some following questions. For instance, you see this phrase, to what extent, basically, evaluate the extent. That tells us that this is going to be a type of specific question that we need to say that there has been change over time or continuity. The second thing you need to be mindful is these time periods. It does no good if you do an awesome job of talking about things in the next time period that basically goes from 1877 to 1898, it's not going to be helpful in your thing, no matter how lights out it is. So what is the step number one? First of all is to read the prompt and slow it down. You need to determine if it's a causation. Is it a cause and effect type of essay? Is it a comparison or a compare-contrast? Or more than likely, with greater degree of confidence, above a 90%, they usually always ask to what extent. That is a change over time or continuity. And so in this situation, if we look at the question, they're asking us, how much have the lives of African Americans changed? And simply stated, at the end of the Civil War, when we have the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments passing, yes, there was a lot of change and a lot of hope and some opportunity. And the ending of slavery, yes, there was hope. With the arrival of the forces in the South, where they turned it into 5 militarized zones, yes, there was some things that were some change. But by the time we get to 1877 and the end of the Reconstruction, you can clearly argue that the lives of the African American were actually maybe worse in some situations, and if nothing else, nothing changed. They were poor and disregarded before the Civil War, and they were poor and disregarded after the Civil War. So those are some things for you to consider as you begin embarking in it. So again, number one, break down the prompt, taking your time to determine what type of question are they asking. Number two is begin categorizing and listing some ways in which you can organize your thought. I'm going to go and I'm going to do this in class and show you some things, but at the end of this video, I'll show you what form that you can follow in coming up with that. But you have to first of all begin thinking of, how do we respond to generating nuance? How do we explain both sides of this issue? And then lastly, how do we make the connections beyond the prompt? So I'm going to try and unpack what those things are here in a moment, okay? The next thing, after you determine the nuance and determine how both sides might look at this, and to determine kind of what connections are beyond the prompt, you need to craft your thesis and create a contextualization. And here I've talked about this in class, I've reviewed it. This is just a reminder of this snow cone effect. And so you can read this on your own time if you pause and see how this unfolds. I'm not going to take the time to reteach to you something that I've taught numerous times. Here is a great context that you may borrow from me on your own. LEQ. You hear that again? You may borrow it from me in order to help guide you in that LEQ. Now, I love to geek out on the thesis formula. I've talked about it. I've pointed you to videos on that. I've spent some time on that. So here is yet another example of how the thesis formula should be run. I focus over here on this side of the aspect. Although X, Y, because of A, B, and C. That's one formula that you can do it. You can also do it in this way. You say, what are you talking about, Steger? This is not some math class. Read below here, and it gives you the very explicit things of how you can approach it. Now notice, I did this for you, and you may borrow again from me this type of thesis statement if you so desire. Okay? That's how good I am for Christmas season. Whoops, a little too fast. Another thing that you need to be mindful of, that there are key phrases that you can use to help guide the reader as you make your way through this. So I love using these change over time and continuity phrases, so take a look at those, take a snapshot of those, and begin using them and employing those into your essay. Step number 4 asks you to do the ACE. You say, ACE, what are you talking about, ACE? Answer, cite, evidence. That's the same thing we've been doing for the short answer type of questions. When you're looking at primary sources, it's the same sort of thing. So you're going to be blending ACE and the GEM system in order to help organize your mind of thinking, and I will go over that here towards the very end briefly, and I will cover that in class. And on page 481, where I encourage you to go back and read through these various notes, you'll see a perfect outline that will tell you exactly what you should do in answering the LEQ question for this final exam. Yes, there's some work for you ahead of you to do, but I've given you a framework, I've given you help with context, I've given you a thesis. I'm now going to go ahead and give you a few more ideas of what you can cite on some evidence here in a moment. And the last step that you're going to want to do, step 5, is then, after you've done all those steps, you're going to begin crafting your thesis with a strong conclusion. So I'm going to take a little risk here. I'm going to try and slide something over that I don't know if it will work or not. So give me a moment while I try and do these various things here. See if this will work. Just doesn't seem to want to. Let me blow it up a little bit, but it's going to be making a blunder here. So I'm going to be bringing something in that I hope will act as a reference, and I'm going to be giving this to you in class as well. So this is a vehicle in which you can begin organizing your thoughts in creating a complex essay. So you'll notice the essay prompt is at the top. You'll notice I've given you some categories of which to begin filling in historical pieces of evidence to support your claim. And then you have the nuance. You then have the explaining the both sides, and then you have the making connections, of which I give you answers right there in the middle. I also give you, if you scroll through here at the bottom, I give you context and thesis, which I've already given in the thing. So I'm going to begin reading off a couple of items that you can perhaps put or use. We'll see if this will work. I'm not so sure. So I'm going to begin reading some things that you can start putting on that form. So kind of get your pins out and be ready to fill those in as to what would be some good positive things to fill in. You say, where, Steger? Right here for the gem and the nuance, okay? So this will be on your form. So a couple of historical things that you can think of. Remember the Freedmen's Bureau. Definitely got to talk about them. Where would the Freedmen's Bureau? Would it be a political thing? Would it be under the economic thing? The Wade-Davis plan. Where would that fall? What about the Lincoln's 10% plan? What about the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment? Where could you put those? What about the Compromise of 1877? What about the Civil Rights Act of 1866? Where would you put the KKK? Where would you put the slaughterhouse cases in the U.S. versus Cruikshank? Remember the Taney Court and the decisions and how those changed the 14th Amendment. Look at the Civil Rights Act of 1875 and how it was reversed from the prior Civil Rights Act of 1866. Talk about the Redeemer governments. Talk about maybe Abraham Lincoln or Andrew Johnson and their plans. Talk about Thaddeus Stevens and the Radical Republicans. There's so many things that come from this time period that you can use to support your claims made in that. So again, I wish you well on this. I hope this gives you some ideas of what to think about and what to write about, and I will give you some more of these things to do in class. Go Bears, good luck, and go out there and be good humans.